Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Thoughtful Talent Show. I'm Jen Werner from Jen Werner Coaching.
And I'm Chad Ahern from Talent and Teams Consulting. And today we are joined again by two wonderful guests, fellow coaches who are going to join us to talk about another one of our CliftonStrengths themes. And we'll get to which one that is in just a second. I know Jen's excited to tell us. But first, I want to introduce our first guest. Marisol von Appen is actually returning. Those of you that follow the show may recognize her from our adaptability episode. She is a fellow Eat to Grow and Gallup Certified Strengths coach with a background in mediation and conflict management. Marisol, alongside her wife, Anya, I hope I said that right, and her dog, Sammy, own and run their company, Compass, or Compans, from their home in Bielefeld, Germany. I hope I said her hometown right. She and Anya help leaders and teams focus on the people factor of their business. Using a fun and inspirational approach, they coach their clients to master leadership and teamwork principles. Also wonderful fellow leadership coaches like Jen and I. Marisol's background in the shipping industry and food-focused television, even working for the Food Network, helps her bring some unique perspectives to her work. Welcome back, Marisol. Thank you so much for coming back and joining us.
Thank you very much for having me, Chad and Jen.
It's Wonderful. Good to have you back. Thank you. So it's my honor to introduce to you Katarina Razmovski. And Katarina, well, she is our success coach for Chad and me at Eat to Grow, which you've heard lots about because we talk about these Eat to Grow coaches. So Eat to Grow is a software that enables companies to offer strengths-based development to every employee. She is also the head of strategic partnerships there. She has legal and HR background and has been a Gallup certified coach since 2018. So Katarina leads, manages, coaches, and supports some of the biggest strengths-based transformations and initiatives regionally for her and globally. I mean, she's touching all of us here in the US too. So she's dedicated to helping coaches and organizations build thriving cultures through strengths-based approach. Katarina, remind me where you are.
I am coming to you from Ljubljana, Slovenia.
Nice. Welcome. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, we've got truly international today. Both our guests this time are international.
Yes.
Wonderful.
It's fantastic. So before we dive in, I want to talk to you. We're here today to talk about the wonderful CliftonStrengths Talent theme of Arranger. And before we get to the description of that, can you both remind me where this falls for you in your top 5? Katarina, for you?
Number 1.
Number 1. And Marisol, for you?
For me, it falls in number 4.
Fantastic. So now knowing where that falls for them, Chad, I believe this is my 24th, so it's not so high for me. How about for you?
It's just outside my top 5. It's number 8. So it's within my top 10, and it's one that I'm becoming more aware of, which is interesting. The last couple episodes have touched on a few of my 6 through 10. So this is another one of those that I'm accessing, but also learning a lot more about, particularly as we've done this series.
Yeah, right. Starting to use those spices more often, I bet.
Yes.
Okay, so with that, let's start off with the short description from Gallup for the CliftonStrengths Talent theme Arranger.
Sure. So Gallup defines this theme as follows. People who are exceptionally talented in the Arranger theme can organize, but they also have a flexibility that complements this ability. They like to figure out how all of the pieces and resources can be arranged for maximum productivity. And I know, given that we have talked to these two wonderful individuals before, that they are going to have plenty to share about maximum productivity. I think it's wonderful. So, as we've started pretty much all of our episodes, we'd love to start to get a sense of how this theme operates kind of on its own. We know as coaches and anybody that's beginning to understand strengths-based development that our talent themes don't necessarily operate in silo, but for the benefit of our listeners and for the start of this show, I would like to sort of dissect just this theme. We'll get to some wonderful theme complements and dynamics here in a minute. But Katarina, I want to come to you first and just ask you kind of, how does this arranger theme show up for you personally? Are there behaviors that those around you would recognize, or maybe even some of us coaches would recognize as being driven by your arranger talents? And maybe what sort of impact that has as you go through your life?
Okay. Well, it's really it's something that I hear often is how do you keep all the balls up in the air, and how do you keep so many things in your head? So this really kind of embodies that in one sense, but in the other, it's really my word that goes with arranger is efficiency. I use it every day, and everyone knows, like, whatever they see, if I'm frustrated about something, they see that, like, okay, this is not efficient for you, and you're getting frustrated, and that is something that I see with in my daily work and personal life as well. But yeah, it's really to kind of showcase in real life. It just happened yesterday when a colleague and me were kind of doing, we had to merge two marketing documents together. And my approach was, okay, I'm going to print one and I'm going to print the other. I'm just going to arrange them like puzzles together and, make sense out of them, because that would make it more efficient. And, we're going to make the best out of this. And on the other side, I had a person who is high maximizer, high ideation, and she was going crazy because her train of thought was, okay, we don't even know if we have the right puzzles, right? And I was just getting frustrated, but okay, we do have the puzzle. How do we now, get them together in a picture? So that was like a really interesting thing to see, like really live. Puzzling everything together into making everything efficient, but at the end of the day, getting the maximum result. So that's kind of how it shows up.
Nice. Wonderful first example. I love that, especially the recent example for you. Marisol, how does your arranger show up, and whether it's similar or different from what Katarina shared? I'm curious for you, how does this show up, and what sort of impact is this, or how does this play out in your life?
Yeah. Some of it is similar. I was just thinking, for me, it's like from all of my top 5, it's, I think, the one that is most prevalent there somewhere, because it's my mind works organizing things and people around me. Like if there's anything comes up, I'm already like, okay, how can we arrange this? How can we organize this? Which pieces do we need to consider? Like at the moment, I'm here in Spain, and we had a week here with 10 friends. I wasn't even the host of the whole thing. But I was the one just organizing everything, and people look to me also to do that. Yeah. Because it comes to me easily. But it's whenever there's a new idea coming up, yeah, from whoever, then my mind is already, okay, how can we do this? This is my execution theme, the only one in my top 15, and that's basically how that shows up.
Yeah. So you've mentioned to me before that you love putting together sort of itineraries and sort of almost the travel logistics of some of your, I know you travel around Europe a lot, and you seem to get energized by the travel aspect, or organizing who's going where when. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, that's a big part of it. That's basically, if we just have the idea of, okay, let's go to, I don't know, now we have the idea, let's go to Canada next year and to visit relatives. And then I'm okay, so when is the best part? I have to take care, where does the dog go? I have to talk these people now. I have to, which relatives are around the way? Which other friends do we want to see? Who, like all this kind of, and having other people's itinerary in my mind also. Yeah. So it's sort of arranging things also with people and around people. Yeah. It's very, as we talked yesterday, which is something that I've thought a lot about. It's, for me, it's a very, I use this talent very people oriented.
Nice.
And that is something that I've heard from you before, and Katarina, just hearing you and your example, it's very much about sort of the project, you know, the piece of paper on the floor, the efficiency is seems very process driven. Marisol, you seem to be highlighting a much more people oriented. You mentioned that this is one of your few executing themes in your top 15 or top 20. If I recall, you have a lot of relationship building themes around this one, yes?
Yes, I have adaptability, which helps, of course. And so sometimes I get mixed up in what is it, because they some sort of go in tandem together.
Okay.
Both of them are very flexible themes, and my adaptability allows me to really adapt to people, also. And I have relator and I have connectedness in my top 5. So and right after that, I've got individualization and empathy. So it's a lot around people for me. Yes.
I'm
and it is also, I have the productivity thing is that's really my productive theme, if at all. And it is, of course, also about efficiency, because of course I also think that I'm the best organizer and that nobody else around me does it a lot better. And it has to be also because I have maximizer in one, which is something that there I have the focus on more sort of having results without too much energy. So I don't like spending energy in vain. And if I organize things, I try to reduce that.
Wonderful.
For me and others.
Yeah, for you and others.
Sure.
Excellent. Those are 2 great starts to this conversation. Thank you so much for kind of level setting us and giving us some wonderful examples of how this shows up in your lives. Because I think sometimes we talk about these as sort of great ideas, but to see them really in practice is wonderful. And I think the examples you've given are beautiful pieces of that puzzle of understanding what this looks like. I know Jen's just chomping the bit to ask our next question, because you've already started to highlight some of the pluses and minuses of this theme. Jen, do you want to take us to our next question?
Yeah, absolutely. So we know that just like anything, too much of a good thing can be bad. So in this section, I really want to talk about those times where you feel like your arranger has gotten in your way. Maybe it's coming on too strong. Maybe you're using it for evil instead of for good. And Marisol, you've already talked a little bit about that too, but Katarina, I want to come to you first. Can you share with us ways you feel like your arranger maybe gets in your way?
Oh, yes, because it's my number one and I lead with arranger, I think, every day. It comes off more often than not. It transforms into a raw part, especially when paired with self-assurance. Like, yes, this is the way the puzzles fit together, and I'm 100% sure. And why would anyone ever in this world doubt that this is the only way to go forward? So the way this happens is I have sort of, it's not really a nickname, but they, in the office, my colleagues sometimes say that I'm a little bulldozer. And I do that because, in my mind, I am a few steps ahead of, when I'm arranging things, I might get a few steps ahead of myself and what I communicate. So it might be that I just don't communicate certain things, which means that people have done other stuff. And I'm like, no, but we're already, on step 3, while someone is already still on step number 1. And then I bulldoze over what they've done. And so that's what happens. And when I pair this with my relator and harmony, I'm like, okay, now I've caused a conflict and frustration on the other side. So I've hurt someone, and then it doesn't make me feel good, obviously, because I hurt someone. That it doesn't feel good to be on the other side of a bulldozer. That's not a pleasant feeling. So
No, nobody's standing in front of bulldozers. Last I checked.
Oh, no. But yeah, it's really something that we've kind of have this. It's an endearing thing, but it's a sign for me when someone said, "Hey, you bulldozed over me here." it's a sign for me to, hey, okay, let's stop and see where I'm at and kind of what I've done, and kind of have that conversation on how we can align and move forward better together. So that's kind of
Thank
how it
you.
happens.
Thank you so much for being vulnerable and sharing that. I will 100% say I am on the bulldozer train also. My activator and achiever together will regularly bulldoze people if things aren't moving as fast as I think they should. Also very hard to rein in when you know what you're supposed to do and we know how to get there. So I appreciate you sharing that like that angst that you go through. Yeah, and that metaphor of the tiny bulldozer. Hopefully it stays small and not big and we just plow everybody over in our way, right? Yeah. Marisol, how about for you? What are some things you've noticed?
Yeah, I can relate to that bulldozing theme more. I think I was to me when I was younger, and I never understood what they meant, but people sometimes would say I would come around or across as bossy, which I can relate to exactly to this, because it's like this thing of something comes up and I start organizing, and in my mind organizing things and other people without really sort of involving them. The communication issue comes in there, because it's like there's not enough time to communicate, and it's in my head it's clear, and it's like it's enough to tell them the result basically. And whether it's with people, whether it's in family, with friends, and also sometimes also with partners, with working partners and so on. And even sometimes where we're not even the status, the stage of a project or a stage of something isn't even there yet, that one would normally, others wouldn't even start organizing yet, but in my head it's all done already. So really that can be something. And then with the years I made the experience really of feeling or seeing how this also leads to disempowerment of others. That on the one hand, it's because everything is basically taken care of, people around me are frustrated that they're not heard, that they're not seen. And I get on the other hand get frustrated at some point, because I think, why can't they just sort of also contribute? But they don't contribute anymore, because when I start doing things, there's no space for that. So becoming more sensitive to that kind of thing, and knowing and appreciating other people have ideas too, sometimes even better ones, although that's of course a very a bitter pill to swallow. But yeah, so that would be that's something that I can completely relate to. And it's really because it's like this, there's not a pause in this. It's like this natural, instinctive, as if there's a switch on. Yeah. Oh. And my learning has been to be more, have that breathing in between. Like, is it really now appropriate? What is appropriate now?
Oh, Marisol, that disempowering others is so good. We've heard that in other episodes. I think it was the Maximizer episode. We've heard that Maximizer tends to maybe have some of that disempowering others because they see the best way forward, or the new way, or how it can be better. And well, why should I even try if you're going to do it? And having this great arranger in my presence, why should I plan it? And when I know that, Marisol can organize it so well. Thank you so much.
And my maximizer is number one.
Oh my goodness.
Number one too.
So
that makes it even more difficult.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Oh, and I love that you brought in the mixture of whether it's for friends or family or colleagues, because Katarina, you and I in our talking before, you've explained some things about how your maximizer is different when you're working with your kids versus working with your colleagues. Can you share more about
maximizer
that with
or her arranger?
I'm sorry, her arranger. I'm sorry, got maximizer on the brain. Your maximizer. I'm sorry, your arranger. Again, see, now I got maximizer on the brain. Yeah, your arranger is different for your kids.
Yeah, it reminds me. It was an association to what Marisol said, really, about this empowering, it's you know, you do tend to treat your kids a little bit differently than you do adults,
Right.
because you know, you still see them as, okay, they're evolving, and you approach them in a different way, right? But at the same time, because you have these experiences, right, and you know, pairing it with a ranger, and obviously, you know the best way forward and how are you going to do things. What sometimes happens is that I have the urge whenever, you know, my daughter, she's 6, and you know, she's becoming her own person, and she has ideas, and she can articulate you know, her own thoughts and ways forward, right? And you want to encourage that. So it's easier in that way for me to say, okay, what would be your suggestion to this you know, challenge that you're facing? But at the same time, I still have to rein it in a little bit, because you know, together with my activator, I see the solution, this is the way forward, let's go, you know, in that. But it does help me, yeah. It does help me though. And you know, when we were talking about before, to me, a ranger, what helps me is having the rails, you know, on each side. And I take this metaphor towards my kids as well, is like, okay, these are safety, that's a safety net, and that's my ranger. And you can play and learn between, you know, in this area on your own, and I should encourage that. And if I have that, or if I give them that, I don't have the urge as much to give them the solution. But if I don't have that, or if I'm frustrated, or if I'm tired, or you know, whatever's happening, I tend to give them the answer. And I have to kind of go back to, you know, thinking, okay, you have to be a coach, and what would you do in this situation? What do you think?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's that mental shift that we have with you know, adults. We know we need to approach them in a coaching perspective, but sometimes with kids, we don't necessarily treat them as equals, and we don't necessarily ask, especially 6-year-olds, for an opinion, but they value that. And I, you know, I learned so much from that, and just
Yeah.
approaching it that way.
Oh, I
Just as
love this.
grown-ups also value that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know, right? But
Oh,
But then she doesn't get to be her little, you know, own bulldozer, just do her own
Right.
thing. She has to, you know, consider other people and
Right.
consider other processes. And yeah, I feel you. Carrie, as you're talking, I came back to some things I shared with Jen in our responsibility episode, just about what we expect and what we don't expect of our kids and how we should approach them. I relate at that time that responsibility, I often think, you know, they should be more responsible. They should know what to do. And actually almost not the opposite of the disempowerment, but almost like, well, shouldn't you know, like you should be responsible for these things? And I'm sensing, or, you know, hearing sort of an undertone of a threat of, well, shouldn't you know how to arrange this stuff? Aren't you, you know, wise enough to put these things together? And so I can relate in that respect. So I feel you and I hear you. And she's making faces at all of us parents. You know, oh, just get it together. So
and I
yeah.
love that you brought in the rails, the boundaries, the limits, because that's always really important. And I've loved like hearing it with the arranger. I never really thought of arrangers having limits or boundaries, and that you guys would just be like, you know, sky's the limit kind of thing. So it's great to hear you say that that's important to you in order to stay on track. Yeah.
It is. It's when you do have those rails, because sometimes in life you don't necessarily have sky's the limit, right? If you
Right.
work in a bigger organizations, there are rules, there are things you need to follow. But in order for me to thrive, it's okay, give me the rails, give me the boundaries, and then give me the freedom to move within this space. And um it is challenging for me, but in a very good way. And I thrive on, you know, that efficiency and how to kind of move the puzzles together. Let's say in terms of project management or organizing a trip that has a budget, right? So now I have rails there, right? Okay, I need to get the best out of what I have. And this is where it's challenging, but in a good way, if that makes sense. And
It does. It does.
yeah.
Yeah. So you're already going in the direction where I wanted to go, which is the next part, which is how does this theme really benefit your life, your work, those around you? Because I know it's amazing and that it does so many great things that people might not notice in the moment, that you've just taken care of everything. You've arranged it all. So Marisol, I want to come to you first with this one. Where do you feel like this theme really shines and has like helped you and benefited your life in the most? In what ways?
Well, I think in my life, because I've done so many different things and so on, I think it has really helped me to organize myself in my life. I have this, I think I would also say that I'm somebody who's very good at multitasking. So the more, for me, it's like the more I have on my plate, the more effective and the more active I am. There's not enough on my plate. There's not enough to organize. Then I sort of fizzle out a little bit. So, and the more complex, the more I'm sort of, I feel alive. I think the benefit also to me or others is basically this, there's hardly anything that can get me out of my calmness. There can be whatever happens. It's like, okay, what needs to be done to get like somehow like a little bit like the first aid person. So what has to be done now? Is everything fine? First things first, but on the same time already having in mind what the next steps need to be. Yeah, this kind of thing. That's something I think that and there's basically for me, this theme for me is very, very solution oriented. It's there's whatever there is, I cannot the argument there's no way to solve this, or we've always done it like this and we can't do it differently, for me is something that I cannot really deal with. There's always some way out there. So that would be my part in that.
Awesome. Katarina, I saw some like big like type nods and faces, so I know that spoke to you. Share with us what you're feeling there and what you have to add.
One thing is multitasking, which can be very frustrating to others. And just I'm gonna give an example because we had an offsite half a year ago with the team, and it was starting to it was towards the end, and we had like 2 hours left of the entire thing there. And 2 hours before we stopped, I started gathering things and kind of collecting stuff while stuff was still going on, right? And the thing was, I didn't even know that, but after the act, I was told that I was very distracting, and I had no idea, and I was like, what are you talking about? And it came across as okay, I'm not interested in that anymore. But what happened in my mind was, okay, I don't have to be fully present in that particular debate, and I can do something else with my 40% of the brain during that time. And it was okay, I can just gather things so that we can be efficient later when we finish, and we can be efficient at cleaning up, right? So there's this part of me, it's difficult for me to be doing just one thing at a time. It almost like I'm sleeping, that's the only time I'm doing just one thing at a time. It's just one thing. That's one thing, but in terms of what others and how others see it, is sometimes, okay, we have to do this and that, and I'm like, yeah, half of that was already done, because I do it by the way, really, like at home. I would go from one room to the other, and would just pick something up and take it to another room because I was on my way there already. So for example, I don't feel like I have to clean all the time because I do it by the way, as I'm doing something else, right? So it's really lots of that, just holding the balls and just doing things by the way. And, it's efficient for me, really. It's just about that. But yeah, the
I,
multitasking thing, Marisol, as you said,
Yeah.
I can't do just one thing at a time.
No.
I'm really interested in this like calm within the storm. Is that true for you too, Katarina? Do you are a calming presence when everyone's worked up about something?
Oh yeah, for sure. I'm like, I don't necessarily like change, but if I'm thrown into change, I'm like, okay, fine. I have this. I can I dissect the situation and have the puzzles that are not going to change it, that are stable, and then I make something out of that. And it calms me, it calms everyone around me because I take what is there. And those are the things that me and everyone around me can kind of, you have the structure, you have the stability, you have the safety. Okay, those are the things that are true. And we're gonna figure other stuff when we get to it, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's kind
Yeah.
of how it happens.
That's interesting. I also have this thing, we cross the bridge when we get there, but I also I love change with my adaptability and on two. So to me, it's like also sometimes somewhere I read this thing, if there's nothing I can arrange, I just do some, in German there's this word Unsinn. I just sort of create something so that things have to be arranged again. Yeah. So I sort of create the change, then I create some kind of something that I have something to play around with again.
Oh,
Yeah.
interesting. So cool.
I don't want to take this whole episode and talk about a different theme, but one of the things that I'm finding really interesting about this whole calm before the storm and pieces that I'm hearing that are similar to behaviors I have, but come from a very different place, which is this dissecting the situation, thinking about what can be addressed, and then kind of developing a path forward. And Jen and I have had this conversation before about, I've got deliberative and harmony in my top 5, and those are two that drive the same sort of behaviors, of thinking, okay, or what are the pieces out in front of us? How do they need to be addressed? How do they need to be, in your language, how would they need to be arranged? Mine is, how do we get over each hurdle? But then the very practical of, okay, let's take the emotion out of this. I know change can be very emotionally charged, but let's sort of not diminish that, but sort of put it to the side. And then let's actually look at the situation. And, Katarina, to borrow some words from you, look at the process. Marisol, I keep getting this very people-driven, thread through a lot of your comments, which I think is beautiful. But then it's just about, okay, where do I practically put each piece to address that? And so I only bring that up because I think sometimes people see, one specific activity and address it or associate it directly with a certain talent theme. I think it's wonderful that you're highlighting what this theme brings in terms of calmness, and you don't get rattled. The change is okay, but that comes from your ability to lean into your arranger themes in a really positive way, and yet it can still be something that is also demonstrated through some other themes in a really positive way. And that's why I guess I highlight it, because a lot of people make that risk of associating one to one. There's a one-to-one relationship. Oh, this behavior is associated with this theme. So anyway, it was also just my connection to what you're saying is I'm loving it, and I can associate with it, but I'm coming at it with a very different lens.
Yeah, it's that like deep why that's in the background, right? What's driving that behavior? What is our purpose in that? With deliberative, we're looking at the risk and making sure that we're not going to fall into a hole. Whereas a ranger is coming from a place of efficiency and a specific different background why. And I love that. Thank you for spotlighting that, Chad. That some of these behaviors can look like a different talent, but to get really to the base, to the why of it, and we can find out really what it is. Thank you for sharing that too.
Yeah.
Do you want to take us on to our next one?
Yeah. Well, since we're already
they've both been already kind of blended.
they're dropping seeds and little, Easter eggs for us to find.
Right.
So we're already.
Are we arranging your episode?
You're doing great.
It?
It's beautiful. It's almost like you're in our heads. No, it's so we're already starting to talk about themes, other themes here, and so I wanted to kind of pick that thread up a little bit. And we started the episode with really trying to parse out just a ranger. What does just a ranger look like? Given that we know that our themes do not operate in silo, they are not single. You just lean into a ranger, you just lean into deliberative, like I was just highlighting. I want to bring other themes back into the conversation, and so in two ways. But first question, and again, I'm going to come to Marisol first with this. I'm curious if there are certain talent themes that you often pair with a ranger. You've already mentioned adaptability a couple times, but are there other themes that you really bring or pair with a ranger on a regular basis that kind of allows you to get the best out of a ranger, or magnifies its impact? What themes are coming to play?
Yeah, I would definitely say my maximizer, my number one, making sure really that's sort of the efficient part there, and making sure that energy is not really wasted along the way, and that there's a good result. And adaptability, I already said. I think connectedness is also very strong here, because it makes me see very quickly on the one hand, which parts are still missing, or seeing where is something missing there that has to be somehow close the gap there. Also, what I do a lot is and then again, people based, connecting people, or I don't know, somebody comes to me and says, I'm going to go to, or a faraway nephew says, I'm going to do a trip I want to travel, I want to go to the United States. In my head, I already say, okay, you can go there. Yeah. And I'm already calling the people to organize it for him or her. Yeah. So my one nephew did it, was in half a year, was in North America and in South America, through basically me organizing the contact.
Goodness.
So that's very much a natural of me. And then I would also say input. I have input, I think it's number 10, where I sort of get all these ideas, the resources basically that I need to organize things. That's, I think, what I would say.
So input is kind of your stack of puzzle pieces on the side, and then figuring out which puzzle piece you need to bring into the image.
Exactly.
Nice.
Exactly.
I love it.
So you shared that this was your only executing theme in your top 15. Is that right?
15.
So
yes.
So do you lean on others or other talents in order to really get things done?
Mostly power of two, my wife. And it's, to me, it's basically adaptability, this thing of I get things done under pressure. Sure. In the here and now, when there's pressure, then I get sort of going. Yeah. And and finishing things off is really something, because I have a lot of I have a lot of thinking themes. They're not in my top 5, but they're all then below that. And that makes it sometimes lots of ideas, and many of them don't get carried through. And then I really, my wife, she's got consistency, she's got achiever higher up. So before we always used to fight about, can you not get things done? And I would say, can you not just start things? Now I start things and she gets them done. So
nice.
That's a good partnership here.
That's a great power of two example. Yeah. Thank you.
Love it. Love it. Katarina, what themes are you bringing to play? Trying to get the best out of a ranger, or magnifying its impact. What themes are you looping in?
Well, definitely I usually pair a ranger with activator, because it helps me get to the end. My activator, my achiever is number 19, so I need something to help me get to the end. So, and together with discipline, it's okay, I'm going to arrange things, and then discipline kind of helps me. Okay, you got to stick to it. You got to actually do it now, because, you know, you've laid it out. So that's a very good one. The other one is individualization, for sure. Just in terms of people, how do I connect the people? How do I get them in the right places where, let's say, a specific task or a project, who do I need to get the most out of this, or who's going to be the best one for this, and kind of fit them together, and also together with harmony, how are they gonna, you know, work together? Is there going to be conflict, right? That, but when I pair it with self-assurance, is okay, if, you know, something is, there is some uncertainty, like we talked about before, if I pair it with self-assurance, you know, it gets that calmness. Okay, I am sure, someone in the group is sure that this is the right path. Let's go ahead and do it. Let's go do it this way. So it's really, together, okay, let's get it started, the can-do attitude that we have, but also when I get asked, okay, what's the next step? My Ranger has, this is the next step. This is how we're going to get to it. So I have the answer how we're going to get to the end, right? Even though I'm not necessarily interested in the end result, or that's not my motivation, because achiever is obviously pretty low for me, but it's the process of getting there. It's all the steps that we need to tackle, or the challenges of whatever you know, is in our way.
Yeah. So wow, that's I love seeing the differences, you know, how you know, if we lean into the things that we already do well and loop in, you know, other top 5, top 10 themes, you can accelerate any theme. And then I love the differences. You know, we had the connectedness, the input from Marisol, and then, you know, discipline and activator from Katarina. I think those are fantastic. I want to flip the question a little bit, in that we know, and we talked about at the beginning, that a Ranger can get going as, you know, its own little bulldozer, and sometimes, you know, the accelerator gets shoved down on that bulldozer, and we're starting to move a little faster than we maybe should. I'm curious, as we think about other themes, are there other themes that maybe don't rein in, because we do want to, you know, fully express our talents, but they can get, you know, overdone? Are there themes that help you bring it back to more of a Goldilocks zone, where it's really running at its most efficient, but it's not, you know, damaging relationships like we've talked about, or, you know, imposing ourselves or disempowering others? What themes are you bringing? What themes are you leaning on to bring a Ranger back into its best contribution? And Katarina, I want to start with you on this one.
Definitely my relationship building ones, for sure. Individualization, developer, relator, and then harmony. Just because it's okay, based on the past experience of, you know, bulldozing. Okay, what might happen if I continue down this path? And I tend to sense if I, you know, bulldoze over someone. So it's really, okay, my relator, which relationships is this going to hurt if I go down this road? So it's really that relationship building themes that kind of stop me.
Yeah.
So Marisol, I want to come to you in a second, but I want to ask a quick clarification question, Katarina. Are you leaning on those themes kind of before you bulldoze, or are you using them as sort of a reflection post incident?
It's a good word, Jen.
What's that?
Before you bulldoze.
It's a good word. She went back to the bulldozing.
Sorry.
It's a very accurate word. There's no other way to describe it.
There is not.
It's more, yeah, it's more a reflection. I was thinking about this yesterday. So the individualization would be, okay, have I so that one, I think, is the one that would stop me before. or the one that stops me before, because it's like, okay, am I getting the best out of that person, or am I really helping that person shine in this, in this setting where I'm putting them in, right? Is that really the puzzle that they need to be in order to shine? But the others are more afterwards. Okay, so what have I done? Okay, okay, I got to go back. I got to fix that relationship because I bulldozed over. But what it does also is it helps me. My communication is pretty low for me as well, so I have oftentimes trouble explaining where I'm at and explaining what happened in my head. So arranging kind of helps me explain to that person, okay, so this happened first, this happened next. Just explaining in the process of, let's say, reconciliation of, okay, this was going on in my head. I obviously apologize to put you in that situation, but this is what was going on. So it helps me structure that apology, if you want to call it. And again, it helps me structure the steps so that the next time it's easier for me not to do it, because I'm going to recognize the pattern.
Got it. Okay.
That's not efficient.
That's
at the end of the day, because I'm going to have to go back and fix it if I continue, if I do it the same way I did.
Yeah, you have to keep fixing and fixing and fixing. Yeah.
Katarina,
That's
this
not
hurts
efficient.
this hurts my heart, because my activator has the same thing. Like my responsibility or my relationship building themes are like in my 5 through 10. I have relator and consistency. My relator is the one that hurts the most. Like now I know I've hurt a really deep relationship, and then I'm like, oh, how am I going to get that back? So like, like you having that activator just pushing, like, it propels all of us forward. It can get to be a runaway train bulldozer. So I so feel for you with that one. They're with you.
Thank you for clarifying that, because I was kind of curious. The way you were saying it is, it always seemed to be sort of a post thing. Now you got to go kind of restart the conversation, and just think about how others might consider how they get the best out of Ranger without doing all the post and recycle. I wanted to further understand that, so that others might help understand it. So Marisol, I did, as promised, I do want to come to you. What themes do you lean on to kind of maybe moderate or bring that arranger back into its best contribution zone?
Yeah, I would say, I was just thinking about it. I would say it's also the maximizer, basically, really. As I said before, sort of thinking a little bit before, is this really the best way to do this now? And sort of, reining it down a little bit from being this automatic, right away executing, just doing this. Then I think for me, it's really also my relationship themes. And I was just thinking, like, also my I've got developer 11. I've got all these relationship themes, rather than really, which are something like, okay, let the others also do. And I think it's maybe also has been a process over the years that I have that I'm more conscious about it, and that I'm more conscious about it to leave more space for others. And that's basically, and a little bit more also the communicating thing. I think, because that's often, I would say, the problem. The problem is not the arranging as such and the organizing, but the not really talking to people and telling them which way you're going. So and I can, and I'm using more of my ideation maybe also to do that. I mean, I've got communication very low also, but communication, sort of ideation and futuristic, that kind of thing of being more aware. I need to communicate and draw the picture. Where are we going?
Got it.
And then with having the relator connectedness, sort of pulling more other, sort of involving other people and their opinions and their points of view, which I have learned through the years are valuable, mostly.
I was like,
I love that.
thank you so much for both being vulnerable, but also giving us some really concrete examples there of how
Yeah.
some other themes can come to again, not rein them in, but just help us moderate them a little bit so that they don't, over bulldoze or over disempower others. So yeah, so thank you very much, Marisol, for that.
Yeah, so I want to take us on to our next one, which is really about our experience with other clients or maybe other coaches, other people that we know that have a Ranger high. So in my experience, I don't know that I've seen anyone that isn't, about that efficiency. So what I'm hearing from both of you, you don't like doing things in vain. You like to, just get all the pieces together and move forward. It sounds very individual contributor like lens to it a little bit, and that might be because of that high executing. But I wondered if anybody else has any other examples maybe of different pairings with a Ranger that come out in a little different way. Chad, I think you had one, but I didn't know if Katarina or Marisol had any examples that a Ranger really shows up differently than the way you two have brought it to us today. Anybody? Crickets?
I don't think so. Like, if they're ever gonna change the names of the themes, they could change a Ranger to efficiency, right, Marisol? It's
Yeah, but the organizing thing has to be in there. What's an organizer would be something
organized. Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah.
It's not to me. For me, as I said, to me, from my point of view, I think my efficiency comes more from the maximizer than from the arranger. So to me, the arranger actually is one of the names of the talents that to me just speaks and has this. I mean, basically says what it means. Yeah, with others, like it's sometimes a little bit more difficult. Especially when you get them into translation of German, which is then another whole story. But I have to, for this question, there's really, in my experience, it's a theme that is not that prevalent there. That's not something that comes up all the time.
Yeah.
Somehow. Nice. I have to sort of maybe focus on a little bit more and see, but it's not that much. Like now, for example, so I'm coaching a team of 5. There's one person that has the top 10 and so on. So it's not as prevalent here with the clients that I work with. Yeah.
Yeah.
Chad, did you want to share your example?
Yeah, and actually, it's interesting. I think, Katarina, you touched on this a little bit at the very beginning when we were starting to talk about some of the theme dynamics and even how this theme best contributes, or actually, I think it was sort of the darker side of how this can get going, maybe in the wrong direction. So to build on what Marisol just said, this hasn't been particularly prevalent in a lot of people I've directly coached. What has surprised me is when I went back and looked at a lot of the people that have been in certain workshops I've been in, this is probably the 6th or 7th highest theme to show up in a lot of those situations. But there was one individual that stuck out to me that I did coach, and this individual had self-assurance quite high in his top 5. I think it was 2 or 3 was where self-assurance fell. And he also had connectedness, which we've touched on a little bit, and seeing the pieces and how they all kind of go together, making those connections sometimes before others had. And the sort of unique display of his arranger was paired with self-assurance is once he had come up with an arrangement, a solution, because he saw all the dots, he was dead certain on that particular solution. And it kind of goes to the comments that both of you have made about sort of disempowering others around him, or maybe not considering some other solutions that might be equal to or better than what he had come up with. And so it's just one of those things that I think it was just something to sort of be aware of, or something that, yes, it's great to have some confidence around your solution, but when you don't leave room, don't leave oxygen for the rest of the solutions. I wonder if that's something that needs to be addressed, and we did in this situation coach a little bit around that, and he started to see the opportunity in opening up that space for others, but it's just something that I guess to be aware of, with that self-assurance and being overly confident in a particular solution. Just where does that leave you? And so I'll leave that. That was my only contribution to this conversation, this part of the conversation. So I was seeing some nodding from Katarina. I know you brought it up, self-assurance. Anything else I'm missing in that, in that trio of things?
No, okay. No, I get that. I see that. It's just being so confident that you don't feel that you don't leave space for anything else. And it's really, you have to be aware of, okay, other people have ideas too. It's okay. Let them be. So it's really that, which reminds me a little bit of that. I don't know if anyone read that book, The Advice Monster. And it really talks about that. Okay, we always go first in giving advice and giving the solution. It was really about, it just happened to me, 2 hours ago when a colleague of mine was, I have this idea and I would do it like this. And I had in my mind already why, this might not work, or why it might work. And I stopped. I was like, okay, what do you think? Right? The annoying coaching question, what do you think? But it did spark some thinking on his side, and it was good. I was like, whatever you decide, I'm gonna back you up, but it's good either way, right? And it really was. But at the end of the day, right, giving people the freedom to think, and realizing that your idea is not the only one, right? Marisol, like, no, my idea is the only one, and it's perfect, and just go that way.
Or was like Marisol said earlier, others have good ideas, right? Right.
Sometimes
I've been told, right?
Sometimes
I've been told. Yeah,
I love it.
Yeah. I just want to offer an observation, just based on everything we've shared so far. And I think this is really important for people that are learning about this thing for the first time, and something that at least I'm taking away from this conversation. So maybe I shouldn't paint this too broad, but the way in which you've often described, throughout this episode, Arranger, one could come away with the idea that this is more of a strategic thinking, that it's about the pieces, it's about finding the path forward. But the real key that I have struck on as you've talked is that there is an immediacy to this, that it is about a near-term situation. Katarina, you started us off right away with the example of, I needed 2 marketing documents. They needed to be merged today. I'm going to put the pieces together on the floor right here and now. And Marisol, you've brought up a lot of other similar situations where it's, I need to build an itinerary because we're leaving next week. We are going to this in this city, and we need to figure out how the 10 people are all getting there. And so I just want to call that out, because I think the thinking that is behind Arranger is supremely awesome in its contribution, but that people need to be aware of, that this is one that is ready to go. I'm hearing a little bit of the activator come into that and the maximizer coming into that, but there is just within this theme a near term, let's get stuff done and arranged now. And I'm seeing some shaky hands, so I hope I'm on the right thread here, but it was just an idea that it kind of had started to percolate in my head, and I wanted to say it out loud to see what the response was.
Absolutely. For me, that's the same. This is like, the whole thinking comes from my thinking themes, but the Arranger is, there's this thing and I just start doing it. There's not a lot of thinking in advance. There's not a lot like, how are we going to do this in 3 weeks? It's then, or I organize something now to be executed in 3 weeks. Sort of. But it's not this, I have to think about it like 10 hours and to have the idea, there's something coming up now. It can be organized right now, this moment.
Katarina,
No
I love
time
you're
in
like
between.
shaking
Katari's
and nodding, and
just-
you're like, "Yup."
There's no thinking involved there. You just do it,
No.
because right, it just happens, Marisol. You have puzzles
Exactly.
and they're there, and you don't have to think about it, right?
Exactly.
That's where you're
Exactly.
going. This is how we're gonna do this.
Exactly.
There's really not much thinking about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
It's
Yeah.
yeah.
So interesting.
Yeah, and again, I wasn't trying to open up a whole other thread for us to follow. I was hearing a lot of the thinking of where the pieces are, and someone could come
Yeah.
away with the idea that this is,
Mhm.
well, wait a minute, why isn't this
Yeah.
over in the strategic thinking domain?
Yeah.
And I think the wonderful thing you've highlighted is that this is a very action-oriented set of
Yes.
talents. So I
Yes.
wanted to bring that up
Is.
before we move on to our next question.
As I said, it's my only executing in the top 15, so that's how I get things done.
Yeah, stuff gets done that way. Excellent. Sorry, that was a little bit of a tangent, not something I had anticipated saying, but I was just kept hearing it, and I felt like I needed to say it. The next question I did want to pose to both of you, and this actually is also something to help some of our people that might be listening to this or starting to kind of trying to connect with it for the first time. We've done this in other episodes. What sort of images or pop culture references do you think kind of exemplify this Arranger theme that somebody might be able to, oh, okay, that's what they're talking about, or that image, yes, now I get it. Now I have a hook into this theme and in understanding it. Are there images or, again, other references that you would go to start to get somebody to understand this theme? And let's go, Katarina. Do you have something first?
Yeah, I would say for me, I see life as like a snowboarding half pipe trail, or however you call it.
Yeah.
Yep.
I have the rails. This is where I am, and I can do whatever in between. It comes down to money management as well. Like, this is the budget that I have for the month, and I can do this with it. And when you calculate in vacation, okay, that's how much money I have to put aside. And now the half pipe is a little bit narrower, and which is okay. I can still work with that. So it's really that. Okay, I'm the snowboarder, and I gotta get to the end of this. So
Nice, good one. Marisol, what about you?
Well, I've got two. The one is the puzzle, and I was thinking of also the puzzle. There's the two the one is sort of that comes more from the connectedness, like I can see the missing piece. But that I've never puzzled. I started puzzling last winter, and then I figured this is how I approach things. Like, there's this thing there, and then I just start doing it. Yeah, it's not about me sort of thinking like, how do I just start? And then if it doesn't work there, I just go somewhere else. And if I don't find pieces, I go away and I come back. So this is the one picture. And the other image I would say that came to me yesterday was something like, now I know the English word, thank you for that, is a switchboard operator. This idea of, somebody calls, and then things have to be, you have to put these, how do you call it? You're better in that language. You have to put the
the pins for the cords. You're moving the connections
exactly.
around.
You got to put exactly. Yeah. So that people, that one person can talk to the other, and this kind of thing. So this is sort of how do I arrange it that these things work. Sort of, that's a picture that came into my mind yesterday.
Nice. Jen, what about you?
I think for me, because it's so low, I've always thought of it as very process driven, and that's probably coming from my all their executing themes, but more of like an organizational chart. So like each piece is in its perfect spot, and they know like where to go to get like the next thing done. So it's like that efficiency part comes back into it, because like your way up the ladder, or however you need to get things where they need to go. That process map.
Okay.
Cool.
And as this is my number 8, I wanted to bring in an example, and I think it ties into some of the things you said, especially about that immediacy. Is often in movies, there's like a bridge will appear almost as the character needs it. There's a great scene that sort of exemplifies this, and it actually builds on something, Katarina, you shared. I think you touched on it today, but I know you've touched on it with some other conversations you and I've had. of using existing materials. So there's a scene in the movie Free Guy with Ryan Reynolds, and not to spoil the end, I don't think this is a spoiler, but there's a scene in which he's obviously living in a virtual world, and the coding takes a building and then morphs it into a bridge out onto the ocean. And so it's using those existing pieces, but rearranging them in a new way to be successful in helping him get someplace. And so that was the image that kind of came to mind as I've been reflecting on this this Arranger talent.
Neat.
Yeah.
I had another idea.
Yeah.
A Kanban board. I don't know how you call it.
Oh.
You know, where they have
Kanban.
it. In marketing agencies where they're putting different pages together and they have it all mapped out. Like I could live on. This is how I work, right? So that would be the image. It doesn't mean have to be perfect, but it gives me. I have the puzzle, I have the pieces, and I could just move them according to what's going on in the day, month, whatever. So that's also a good one. Yeah.
Excellent.
Oh, that's great. You guys, thanks so much for all of those great answers. And so now what I really want to take us into this place of like maybe being able to offer some advice. So as we think about how others might best interact with those who have Arranger, what advice would you give to team members or colleagues so that they can help draw out or maybe help the person with Arranger offer their best contribution to the team? Marisol, I'm going to start with you.
Well, I would say, on the one hand, sort of be clear, sort of give that person the task. Tell them this is something that needs to be done, sort of, and watch out if people sort of just start doing things, and give them feedback early if they're sort of getting active before it's actually necessary. Tell them a little bit that what Katarina said, sort of tell me the limitations that there are, because I, for example, work with no limitations. It's like whatever, it's like any resources, I'll get it somewhere. So if there are limitations, if there are limited resources, or what are the resources, to be clear about that, and give me and give really timely feedback about whether this whole thing is going into the right direction, whether that what is needed, or are we going in a completely different direction? Yeah, that would be my 5 cents to that.
Yeah, thank you. Katarina, how about you?
Yeah, 100%. And give me complex projects. Like give me stuff with lots of moving parts. Something that's that seems very complex. I'm gonna make it simple because I enjoy that, and it makes me happy. Whenever I'm giving a task or responsibility to do something, give me a deadline, because then I can arrange it into my priorities, the company's priorities, whatever it might be. Otherwise, like Marisol said, right? Because I know, we have vacation in half a year, right? If I don't know when we're going, I'm going to start planning now, right? But if I know, then okay, I can start doing that in 3 months, which makes me more efficient, because I can, I can drop that ball for a little while, and I can leave that off my head for some time, and then I can be more efficient with other stuff. So yeah, that's what helps.
Awesome. These are great things. Awesome advice.
And give freedom and space for creativity between those boundaries, right? Because if you give me a task, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to do it great, but give me the pieces that I have, and then let me be.
I can so relate to that last statement.
Resources.
I think Jen and I have had a lot of conversations about our responsibility being that same sort of way of just give me the authority. If you want this done, just give me the information and then step out of the way. And I think that's great advice that also seems to be very applicable to this Arranger of give me the pieces, give me the guardrails, and then just kind of get out of my way and let me do my thing. And having worked with you Katarina on a couple projects, I know how awesome it is when I do, I've said this is the timeline, or this is what the companies that I'm trying to work with is trying to do, and then you wonderfully put together something, but I kind of put the onus almost back on you and let that arranger run. So I think that's wonderful advice for people that are trying to lead those with arranger. Step out of their way. That's I think that's so
exactly. And whenever we
Step out of the way.
collaborated,
Step out of the way of the bulldozer.
No, but it's really like whenever Chad and I have, a project that we need to discuss or something, I so appreciate all the facts. Like, Katarina, these are the facts. This is the challenge that I'm facing. This is what the client is looking for. This is what I've already done. And it helps me because I know the facts coming in, and these are the puzzles, and I can do things, and I can give different suggestions and everything. And this is where sometimes with a colleague of mine, or sometimes people see that as very unprepared or very spontaneous in the moment, but because I have all those pieces, it's easy for me to be very spontaneous in the moment. So I don't have to have everything prepared. I have the rails, so that's fine. But in between, I can do. But if I have someone on the other side, it's difficult sometimes to follow because that creates some uncertainty. Because where is she gonna go? Is she gonna nail it? Isn't she gonna nail it? What's going on there? So yeah.
Yeah. No, I so much appreciate that extra perspective. So thank you for sharing. We have spent, I actually think, a little bit more than an hour together. This has been fantastic, and I've loved, so much of what you've highlighted. I'm starting to get to, see a little bit of my arranger and some of the behaviors I have in my head. So now clearly explained from the outside. So thank you for that. As we wrap up this episode, as good coaches, we always usually put it back on, the coaching client. What did you get out of this session? What was most useful? I'm going to essentially do the same thing to both of you. As we wrap up, what are the couple highlights that you think our listeners or our viewers should really be coming away with? What should they really know about this arranger theme? Or if there's something that you maybe didn't get to that you really think needs to be, highlighted and underlined, what are those? And if you could give me, maybe 2 or 3 high points from each of you, I'd love that to be our wrap up for today. So I can see both of you thinking, Katarina, I'm going to come to you first because you just said you like the little bit of the spontaneous. So,
right.
Here's your moment. I need 2 or 3 key takeaways for our listeners.
Okay. So for me, this was a new thing for me that you actually highlighted was, the process-driven arranger and the people-driven arranger. That one was interesting to see because I've never seen it that way. So that was a new thing for me, and I see how true this can be. But another thing is really, if you have someone on the team that's high in arranger theme, give them complex things. Really, we thrive in those situations and rely on them to rely on the calmness that the ranger theme brings to the team, to the results and everything. Rely on that because it will deliver. So that one was because I saw that be very common between Marisol and myself, and I would say really give them that.
Nice. Thank you. I think those are wonderful and well taken points. Marisol, what would your 2 or 3 key takeaways be for our listeners and our viewers?
Yeah, to me, it was really something new. This Katarina's take on I need the rails, or I need this kind of the rails basically within I can move, which I thought was interesting because for me it's a little bit different, but I can completely see that. And I would also say if you have, there's so many people around that just hate organizing and they hate putting these things together, and there's a thing that they have all these thoughts and they can't put it to work. Look out for the rangers around you. They're happy to do it. Yeah. And no matter what time of the day or night, they're happy to just sort of, yeah, we can do that. And they do it fast also.
Nice. Yeah. 4 wonderful key takeaways from 2 wonderful coaches.
Yes.
Thank you so much for your time. This has been an absolute blast. I know Jen and I interact with you both on, sort of sporadic basis, but we're all in the eDeGro community and lean on each other. Thank you so much for offering your time and your perspectives to us and to our listeners too. Jen and I get to learn, but this is really hopefully something that others will be able to use as a resource to understand themselves, or maybe understand a peer, or maybe even a spouse that has a ranger. So I just want to say thank you. And I'm going to transition a little bit to speak to our listeners and our viewers. If you have liked this episode and want to hear more from Marisol and Katarina and the other coaches that we're going to have on, we'd love for you to join the conversation. Leave us a comment, leave us a review. I know the algorithm bots out there that, move us to the top of certain lists, are always happy when we get some feedback. But it also continues the conversation. We've spent an hour here, and comments and additions to the conversation just broaden the perspectives. And so please, on both our Acast and YouTube channels, we encourage you to engage with the conversation.
Absolutely. And if you want to reach out to either of our great coaches that we had on today, you can find Marisol and Katarina's contact information in our show notes, both on the Acast and within our YouTube podcasts. Always, if you want to reach out to Chad and me, we have our links on the show notes as well. So always reach out to us. We love to hear from you.
So until next time, and as a final thank you, I want to say thank you. But until next time, I'm Chad Ahern from Talent Teams Consulting.
And I'm Jen Werner from Jen Werner Coaching.
Yeah. And I'm going to encourage you to keep playing to your strengths. And I know Jen's going to encourage you to
be uniquely you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, and have a great rest of your day.